Something that I get asked quite a lot is, does mindfulness help with anxiety? And the answer is kind of yes, it can, but also it can be harmful as well, especially if you're struggling with an anxiety disorder. And so a lot of people turn to mindfulness for sort of like a quick fix for anxiety when they're in the midst of an anxiety disorder. They think, oh, I've read somewhere that mindfulness might help. Let me just turn to that as the thing that's going to fix it, hoping it will calm them down instantly. But instead, they end up feeling way more caught up in their heads and getting pulled into mental habits such as rumination or body scanning or constantly monitoring for threats. So, why do we do this? Well, when we feel anxious, we naturally want relief, and mindfulness can sort of feel like the answer. The idea of, say, staying present and focus kind of feels empowering, so we try and use mindfulness to shift our attention away from discomfort. However, this can actually start to make us think, if I can just practice mindfulness right now, maybe I can stop feeling anxious. And we sort of use it as a technique to try and get rid of anxiety. And this is when it becomes a little bit harmful. Using mindfulness in this way can unfortunately backfire, and it can turn into yet another compulsive behaviour that keeps us trapped in sort of anxious thinking. Spending too much time in our heads doesn't help when we're already incredibly overwhelmed by our anxious thoughts. And turning to mindfulness in the midst of feeling anxious can actually lead to our attention becoming more inwards focused, and this can lead to body checking and scanning and constant threat monitoring, reinforcing the very anxiety that we're trying to calm down. Instead, it's important to consider our relationship with mindfulness. Mindfulness should support a sense of presence and build our skills in attention without becoming a reactive tool to make anxiety go away. Rather than seeing it as a quick fix, approaching mindfulness as part of an overall wellness routine lets it become a long-term proactive tool rather than a reactionary measure or technique that we might revert to once we feel anxious. In the midst of an anxiety disorder, focusing on body sensations as part of mindfulness can actually be really unhelpful and keeps you stuck in this cycle of body checking, or we may be more prone to noticing our intrusive thoughts. Mindfulness is about gently directing our attention, so trying to shift the majority of it away from anxiety can make a big difference. Learning to observe our thoughts rather than getting lost and caught up in them can help us build a sense of distance between them rather than feeling trapped within every anxious thought. Mindfulness is most effective when practiced regularly and not just in those crisis moments, and it's worth considering your intentions with mindfulness. Is it something you're doing as a proactive skill, or is it a reaction to feeling anxious? Integrating it as a consistent habit when you're calm builds a resilience, and it helps you avoid relying on it solely when anxious. You can also treat mindfulness as an exposure. Treat it as an experiment and practicing mindfulness while feeling anxious to build a tolerance without expecting it to make anxiety disappear in the moment. Try to avoid using mantras and affirmations, which can turn into sort of like mental compulsions of self-reassurance or self-soothing. Instead, focus on observing your thoughts, letting them come and go without forcing or needing to try and control them.